Hello everyone and welcome back to the garden. So today is the October tour. So it's the 18th of October, which is a Saturday. And just to give you guys an idea of what the weather has been doing recently. So we've had 2 weeks of very dry weather, hardly any rain at all, just a little bit of kind of drizzle. And we've now got some heavy rain due tomorrow. So I thought it'd be a good idea to do the tour today before all the leaves start coming off the trees and starting to look messy. So I'm going to do the tour of the back garden first. So as you approach through the gate, the lovely palms, the Phoenix canariensis palms, are putting on loads of growth this year. So they've definitely, trunks have got bigger on those ones. And you can tell we haven't had a huge amount of rain as the pond is actually sitting a little bit lower than it would be normally, probably by about, I don't know, about 10 centimeters lower, I'd say, on there. So there's lots of autumn tints to a lot of the leaves at the moment, and things like the grapevines have been dropping their leaves as well. So overall, this year has been a very good growing year. I've fed a lot of plants, like key plants that I wanted to look really good and to put on growth. So I've concentrated my efforts on those ones. And generally, a lot of plants that are in the ground, I've kind of left to it, just so that they can get really rooted properly and they can just find their own way, really. Uh, it wasn't necessarily about massive growth for some of these plants. So just letting them establish, really, so that next year will be an even better growing year. So you can see the Insetti banana there, which is starting to get its autumn tints. And soon I will chop all the leaves off of that and dry store it for winter. So you can see the Washingtonia robustas are looking absolutely fab. I've got two which are kind of multi-trunk ones like this, which technically are individual plants put in the same pot. And I've got one which is a single stem one, which I split from one of the multis quite a while ago. So let's have a look in the courtyard area. The main highlight really this year, I suppose there's two. The Cordyline australis put on loads of growth, forming a really nice trunk at the bottom there. And the foxglove tree here has grown, they're one of the fastest growing trees, and that will get coppiced down to enable it to get bigger leaves next year. Got the banana in the corner there, which was only about 3 foot high when it went in, and it's now taller than the fence, which is great. So yeah, this I'd say so far this autumn, our lowest temperature here down in Hampshire has been about 5 Celsius, which is probably about average on there. So obviously some of the plants started to really start to drop their leaves and go into that kind of autumn mode, and a lot of those have been moved to the greenhouse. I generally let stuff get to about +5 degrees outside before I move it in, just so it kind of, I don't know, it helps with sort of hardening off a little bit. And also, the longer you kind of store your plants for, the more I find that they tend to really sort of decay and don't look so good. So if you can possibly leave things to the as late as possible, really, so that you are not overwintering stuff for too long, particularly things that can rot off on there as well. So I will talk a little bit more about this Butiagrus erythpatha. It's a very rare palm, and I'm building a shelter for this year as well as my phoenix palm in the front garden, just because I want to get them established. So they have been through a winter before, down to -6, with some protection on them. But basically, I'm building like a sort of polycarbonate greenhouse structure that's going to be kind of tall and thin and will go around the plant. And basically, excuse me, the plan really for that is to leave one side open to allow light and ventilation and everything, and then on the coldest of nights I will just screw on some additional panels, and that will provide the frost protection for it. So the polycarbonate sheets are generally, I paid about £46 for 14 sheets, which are 1.2 meters in size by about 62 centimeters or something. And because I'm building them quite big, I needed quite a few sheets, and I'm building 2 of them. And I will have some leftover sheets which I will use for building some smaller shelters for some of my sort of smaller palms, so some Trachycarpus cross varieties, some hybrid varieties which are very small at the moment. I just want to give them a bit of extra winter protection. As you can see in the autumn, even though some of the trees, like the sycamore there, is losing its leaves at the moment, generally I've built the garden with a lot of winter interest in mind. So you'll see a lot of plants which are evergreen and very architectural, particularly in this kind of arid area here, as it is a focal point in the garden. Sand's obviously still looking really clean and tidy for the moment. And I found generally, if you've had a little bit of wet weather, it's generally the best time to blow the leaves off it, as the sand isn't so dusty and doesn't really blow away as much. So, as you might have seen in some of my previous videos, this back bed had some major tweaks to it. So I removed a load of Rudbeckia and other plants, and I've kind of moved them around in the border. And I've introduced the Braharamata into this border. At the moment it's in a pot just in case we have some really severe cold weather, but all going well, I will plant that in the ground next year. So we shall see on that one. I wanted it to basically put on a bit more growth just to get a little bit more of a decent size so that it will go through the winter time. So you can see the maple tree here has lost a lot of its leaves, which is totally normal. Over here we have the Washingtonia robusta, which is the single stem, and when I initially split it from the main clump, it really was quite sorry for itself and it almost looked like it was going to die. But it's actually turning into one of my favourite palms. It's got beautiful leaves and it's forming a really nice trunk, which is great. And it's now, the tip of the leaves is about 6 foot. So this is a location that I am considering planting it in, as we have quite a bit of sort of, well, we've got the shed to the left hand side there and the tall hedge, and there's lots of kind of protection from cold winds. So that potentially will be a really good position to try actually putting this one in the ground, which will be really exciting. And in my location, it should grow quite well. It will get plenty of sun here as well. The only thing being is obviously on the colder, frosty nights, anything below about -2, the leaves will defoliate. So yeah, I'll have to accept that it will do that, and then it will bounce back in spring. Just a quick view of my potting area here, and I'll show you what I've got in the greenhouse at the moment. So greenhouse is about half full. Heater's not on, but it is in place. The manihop is in here as well, and these colocasias which I've been growing on, these are the black stem variety, and they have proven very frost hardy in my location. So even though they they've been down to -6 outside, would you believe, in the ground. And they initially did have a bit of rot on the bulb, and then they bounced back amazingly. And that was only with like a little bit of mulch on them as well. So I think if I mulched those a little bit more heavily, they would have gone through even better. So yeah, very impressed with that variety. Supposedly, obviously, pink china is the most frost hardy of the varieties, but I've definitely found the black stem being really good. So just a view towards the chicken coop here, and you can see the palms in particular are growing really well, considering these went in at a foot high, or a couple of feet high I should say, with less than a foot of trunk 2.5 years ago. And look at the size of the trunks on them now. That's at least a 3 foot trunk on that one, and it's about 7 foot tall on there. So yeah, I've made a few tweaks to the garden in the autumn time, as it is a good time of year to dig up plants and move them around. And I've been really good this year at kind of plants that are going to need winter protection. I've kept in pots, or in quite big pots and things like that, so they will move into the greenhouse or garage on the coldest of nights. Now this area here, the fire pit area, has really evolved this year, and I had to move these colocasia black stems because they were in front of the tree ferns, and yeah, it was sort of ruining the view of the trunks and the actual shape of the plants there. So look at the size of these bananas, absolutely massive. And I'll just show you the stem on this one. Look at that, that is a whopper. So yeah, I will protect my banana plants, so I wrap them in a kind of fleece, which till about 6 foot tall, and then the top bit I just generally leave, and if it basically frosts off, then I just chop the top off and it will regrow from about 6 foot tall. Last year this one didn't frost off, that top section, so it bounced back massively. So that one is probably about 15 foot tall, so that one is a whopper. So really that's the view, little tour of the back garden. Let's have a look at the front garden. Okay, so we're now in the front garden. We're on the drive looking down towards the road. And there's been a few tweaks this year, so I've moved this plant into this location here just to fill a gap. I've really tried to get rid of plants that are not performing or look really tatty at generally at different times of the year. So sometimes it might have a good spring display, but actually in this autumn or even in the summer, some of the plants, they look really tatty and horrible. And do I really want a gap in the border? That's the thing. So a bit of cloud coming in today, so let's just start at this front bed here. So highlight of this bed this year is obviously the amazing Phoenix Canariensis palm. Now it did get a bit frosted off last year as we had unexpected snowfall in November, which is very rare for my location actually. So you can see I put some stakes around it and some wire, and that's basically just to try and keep the leaves in a bit more of an upright position, because basically I'm building a shelter around this palm this year. It's a bit of an experiment really, but it's to try and minimize any frost damage to the leaves. So I don't want it at this stage to be having to spend the summer bouncing back from a cold winter. So a bit of protection, I think, will really help this particular palm. Now, this is a Martianus, Trachycarpus martianus, uh, Kin Kinla Hill, and you can see it's got lovely silvery undersides to the leaves on there, and this one is starting to put on some decent growth now. So I'm excited about seeing that next year put out some bigger leaves. So pretty much with the front garden, obviously you guys who have seen the videos before will know that it had a complete revamp, the front garden. So the tropical theme in the front garden is new as of the beginning of 2025. And there's lots of videos that I've done charting the progress of that. So yeah, some really good successes here. So I managed to get some really decent palm trees in the ground that were in pots. So we've got a Camerops hominis cerifera here with a amazingly big trunk, and these particular plants have really benefited from being in the ground on there. Obviously I bought in these massive Trachycarpus palms which came originally from just trying to think of the name of it, from Seagrave Nurseries, which is no more, unfortunately. But this year they've put out a couple of leaves, but basically they've been doing an important job for me. They've been basically putting their roots down in the ground and recovering from obviously being dug up from a field where they originally grown. So same with the Bootia here, and that's been pretty impressive. We've got a couple of new leaves out of that, even though it is newly planted this year. This one seems to have put on the most growth for me. You can see all these new, slightly lighter leaves. So we've got at least two, and there's a third one coming up on there. You can see the little Niphotheas that I bought recently performing really well, adding a nice bit of colour underneath the palm tree there, and again some really good lovely autumn colours on the phormiums. Now I must say I bought a pair of waggy palms from B&M, and they have done really well. A lot of people are quite skeptical about buying palms from B&M. They tend to be very cheap and quite a decent size for the money. But people are saying about, how well rooted they are in pots and things like that. Now, I found that the pair that I bought, these waggy palms here, I mean, they've got a really good trunk on them. They're looking really healthy. We've got new spears coming out the middle, and look at those lovely leaves. So for the price I paid for them, which I think was £37.50 each, and they're already kind of at least a foot and a bit of trunk on them, and yeah, they've definitely put on growth this year, even though they went in kind of in the summertime. Here's the little shelter that I built at the beginning of the year. And yeah, I'm just really pleased with how the front garden has performed, considering it is just such a new garden. And I did feed stuff and I did water stuff at the crucial times when it was really dry. And I've even moved a few plants around from the original design, and even quite late on in the autumn. So I've moved, these grasses were in this front location and I've moved them into a gap in the back. Some echinops didn't perform for me very well, and it was part of the old garden, so I removed those. And there is a bit of a gap in this border at the moment. Doesn't look too bad at this time of year, but obviously in the summer you don't want a huge gap there. But that is where the colocasia black stems are going to go, so they will get loads and loads of sunlight, and I do have some irrigation pipe which I can run over the top of them to keep them watered during the summer. And these were the seed grown bananas. I think they are Sycamensis something tiger, Bengal tiger or something like that. And establishing really well. I will need to frost protect them this year because they are a smaller plant. But I will just wrap fleece around those and form like a fleece tube and then put some membrane around it just to make it look a bit more attractive. Now, this palm tree I would say has put out more leaves than the one down at the front, but it's purely because it's probably received a little bit more water because it's nearer to the tap. So it's starting to form a nice canopy there, but it will take a bit of time. You might have seen in one of my other videos, I swapped around the tetrapanax was planted. It was actually not planted, sorry, it was in a pot in this location around here, and the goldenrod was in that location. So I switched them mainly because the tetrapanax will put on a lot of height and I didn't want it to basically bash into the tree there. And yeah, so a few tweaks in this bed, a couple of little plants that I added quite late on was the cordyline red stars. I've put them in a little group of 3 here. They are underneath the tree, so even in the winter with the tree branches, you normally, even with no leaves on them, you find that they do provide just a tiny bit of frost protection. And because these are smaller plants, they will need a little bit of helping hand just to get growing properly. And what I will do with these is I will put a cable tie around the base, and then on the coldest of nights I will pull it up like this, which will protect the central growing point from severe frost damage. This bed I added quite, I think it was in the late springtime, and the dahlias have been absolutely amazing. I think they're Babylon Red is the variety, and even now performing brilliantly. They flowered probably from about mid-May, June time, and they're still going towards the end of October. So excellent bang for buck. And I will heavily mulch them and leave them in the ground. And the eventual kind of aim for this bed is we have 2 Trachycarpus in here, which are, we've got a Trachycarpus wagnerianus cross princeps, which will have amazing silvery leaves on there, and then we have just a Fortunii crossed princeps here, which again has got these lovely silvery leaves. They've been planted as a pair because although they are slightly different varieties, they will have similar qualities, and as a pair they will basically grow and create a canopy here. And I will leave things like the dahlias in between them so they will grow up and yeah, fill in and give a bit of kind of colour at the lower level once these establish into proper trees. And yeah, so let's just have a look towards the front of the house. So we've got beds that kind of go along the front and various kind of shrubs and trees. And this bed here, we have a new addition right at the end of the bed. As a full stop, it used to have a cistus that used to go up against the wall there, and there was more sedums and Virginia around it. But I bought this Camerops Humidis cerifera. Beautiful silver leaves on that, absolutely stunning. And it's a really nice specimen plant, and basically I wanted it in this position so that everybody can see it, and when you come up to the house it just makes the corner look so much better on there, and it adds to that kind of tropical style theming. And it also complements the Volcano that I put in earlier in the year. And yeah, so it's kind of blends the two together. Let's just have a quick look at the final bed. So as you look down the garden, and you've got the main kind of topiary area here, we've got another bed on this side, which again was a bit of a, when I was originally doing the design, I didn't have a flower bed in this location, but I felt like it needed height here. So essentially, the plants that I've put in here I'm really happy with, but I'm not so happy with the exact locations that they're planted in. It's mainly because we've got a nice Camrops Humilis, just a bog standard one on the end here, which is a good evergreen full stop. But I do eventually have a Trachycarpus nunatal that will need to go in the ground at some point. So I'm happy with the Tetrapanax location here, but what I might do is, because from the front, when you look down the front, you've got this miscanthus, which is very, very tall, and then you're not really going to see anything behind it. So I think the miscanthus is going to have to move down nearer to where the cornice is, and I need to find out a location really to fit the Trachycarpus in. So I might have to do a little bit of tweaking to this bed. But yeah, happy with all the plants that are in here. They just probably need a little bit of a readjustment on there. So they are some of the things that I'm hoping to kind of look to achieve. And I must say, for the time of year, October, everything is looking quite clean and tidy. As I say, we've got heavy rain coming in tomorrow, which is going to mess things up a little bit. But yeah, the plants are looking super healthy. Anything that is really, either died or is not looking very good has been removed from the garden. So as time goes on, we should end up with a garden which is easier to maintain, because the plants which are in it are looking good for most of the time. I'm going to be quite ruthless with any new plants that I buy to make sure that they actually fit in with the theme. I've got a lot of plants in both these gardens now, so I don't really need to make unnecessary purchases to sort of fill up beds. Now it's about, if there's a plant I really desperately want, then I will find room for it. But apart from that, the garden is kind of developed how I want it. So hope you've enjoyed the tour. It's been quite a long one today, but I wanted to show you guys really, both gardens and how everything is looking. So as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button. That helps push the content to new people who will be looking and interested in the same kind of stuff that you guys have been looking at. So many thanks, and I'll see you guys on the next video.